Well, we've got the latest immigration numbers. Get a load of this. Every day, Australia is taking in 1,544 new people. That's the equivalent of 5 fully loaded Boeing 787 Dreamliners.
Hello, I'm Linton Besser. Welcome to Media Watch. And first tonight, the tsunami of migrants threatening to overwhelm the country, as Radio 2GB shock jock Ben Fordham explained last week.
In the first 6 months of this year, we've had 279,000 arrivals. That's more people than the population of Hobart. 5 Dreamliners landing every day. 1 Canberra added every year. When's it going to stop?
So enthused by his Dreamliner analogy, Fordham continued taking to the sky.
5 fully loaded Boeing 787 Dreamliners. 1,544 people a day. 5 Dreamliners landing every day.
Over on Adelaide's 5AA, Graham Goodings was also rather fond of Fordham's clever airliner device.
Dreamliner after Dreamliner, jumbo jet after jumbo jet flying into this country. In every 3 years, another city the size of Adelaide, effectively.
Worse still, his fellow presenter warned these people might be diseased.
We don't know their vaccination history. No. So if they haven't had the measles or the chicken pox or whatever the case might be, there's a potential that that virus comes into our country.
Right-wing lobby group Advance used an AI-generated video to finesse the point.
1,544 new migrants every single day.
1,544 more people who need housing.
1,544 more people competing for jobs and schools.
Memories of the campaign for Brexit. So where did the 1,500 a day figure come from? Best we can see, it came courtesy of the Institute of Public Affairs, a conservative think tank which 11 days ago warned Australia's economy was being pummeled by excessive migration. All on the basis of data published by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. But most inconvenient for the media was this little disclaimer from the Bureau.
This data does not reflect the official ABS definition of migration and may lead to inaccurate interpretations.
And?
Should not be used as a measure of overseas migration.
Which the IPA did attempt to explain, and which the ABS also tried to drive home when it contacted those journalists so dazzled by the IPA's glittering calculations, before straightening out the record itself.
Multiple media stories have been published this week using overseas arrivals and departures data, which may lead to inaccurate conclusions on migration.
In fact, there are reliable migration numbers laying about. And what do they show?
Over the 12 months to 31st of December 2024, net overseas migration was estimated at 341,000, a decrease of 190,000, 36%.
Which paints a somewhat different picture, no? And while, yes, the data has been used as an indicator of long-term migration trends, the experts we spoke to assured us that rather than being overwhelmed by migrants, in fact, we're getting fewer.
It is our expectation that net overseas migration will continue to fall when the next round of numbers is published in September.
We asked Ben Fordham about the figures and sadly we didn't hear back. On his show this morning, however, he insisted that even if the real numbers were lower, concerns about migration remain valid. With his guest, the economist Leith Van Onselen, explaining...
They're not perfect, they're not as accurate as the official numbers, but we use them all the time because we have to.
And that's exactly the kind of nuance that was missing on radio last week. Because while immigration is an important public debate, it's also freighted with emotion, not least because the fear of foreigners is as old as time and too often has been drawn upon by outlets thirsting for audience. The 1,500 migrants a day story has now taken seed across social media ahead of anti-migrant rallies this Sunday. That migration is actually expected to fall will matter not one little bit. Now we turn to what was billed as a world-exclusive interview broadcast on primetime Australian television last week.
It is the interview that has got the entire world talking, the conversation between Sherry Markson and Benjamin Netanyahu.
On Thursday, Sky News Australia landed the interview that was the envy of news networks across the globe. An exclusive 16 minutes with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Through the week, Sky News' Walkley award-winning Sharry Markson was breaking news about the steady deterioration of the relationship between Australia and Israel in the wake of a decision by Anthony Albanese to support the formal recognition of a Palestinian state. She obtained a copy of the highly critical letter Netanyahu had sent the Australian Prime Minister and reported Netanyahu's social media spray, which accused the Australian PM of being weak. Which is why Markson opened her landmark interview like this.
Why do you believe history will remember him as a weak politician?
I think his record is forever tarnished by the weakness that he showed in the face of these Hamas terrorist monsters.
The exchange prompting news reports across the media. Markson also asked a sharp question about rumours of an imminent ceasefire.
Is this true, and do you still plan to take over Gaza and eliminate the terrorists if they do agree to a deal?
Well, we're going to do that anyway.
But between these bookends, what would you have asked a world leader whose military campaign has killed tens of thousands of people and prompted waves of protest at home and across the world? Here's what was on Sharry Markson's interview clipboard.
Have you been shocked at the anti-Semitism, the violence, the hatred you've seen unfolding on our streets here in Australia, and then the lack of action and the lack of leadership from the very top, from our Prime Minister?
Well, I was very dismayed.
Bibi was then invited to wax lyrical on any resemblance he sees between Albo and those who thought they could do a deal with Adolf Hitler.
Is this word appeasement a direct reference to how Europe dealt with Hitler in the 1930s? And do you think we're seeing from leaders like Albanese and others a similar complacency now?
It's exactly what we're seeing.
Markson did ask about the persistent allegations of starvation and genocide in Gaza, prefacing those allegations as false and defamatory.
Part of the problem here is that there is a very effective propaganda campaign being run against Israel. The Albanese government is aiding and abetting it, so are some media outlets. Prime Minister, what do you say to the libels that Israel is deliberately starving Palestinian children and is conducting a genocide in Gaza?
And otherwise giving Benjamin Netanyahu, potentially the most consequential world leader at that very minute, a free pass, with much nodding and enthusiasm.
You will encourage more and more and more of this radicalism in your own country,
Absolutely.
in your own children.
Absolutely.
And you...
In all, Sharry Markson asked Benjamin Netanyahu 8 questions, but not one which might have put him on the spot. Not even about pointed criticism from prominent figures in Australia's Jewish community, who 24 hours earlier had written to Netanyahu decrying his comments about Albanese as inflammatory and bound to incite yet more anti-Semitism down under. On Friday, we asked several of this country's most experienced journalists to give their assessment of Sky News' World Exclusive. One was Michael Gowenda, a former editor of The Age newspaper and contributor to The Australian, who has written of his deep connection with Israel. He told us,
"This was the definition of a soft interview. It was beyond soft. It was not journalism. There was not a single challenging question. Indeed, the questions weren't questions at all, but statements of agreement with what Benjamin Netanyahu had said about Australia and Albanese in particular, so that all he had to do was agree."
Gowenda said he would have asked Netanyahu about those criticisms made by the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, and Gowenda is not alone. Potentially Australia's most well-known television journalist, Ray Martin, told us Sharry Markson should have asked about them too. He added,
"It was clearly not an interview, but a sycophantic endorsement of Benjamin Netanyahu. It failed journalism 101. There was no attempt at balance. There was not one critical question. Good on her for getting an exclusive interview, but it was a wasted opportunity."
Helen Daly, formerly of Channel 9's storied Sunday program and a former anchor at Sky News Australia, told us she too was disappointed.
The Sky News interview was a missed opportunity to even slightly challenge a political leader of a country engaged in war. Not one challenging or probing question.
In contrast, the same interview conducted by a daytime news anchor at Sky News' American counterpart included questions like these.
Your own soldiers have been accused of killing innocent Gazans who are in line for food. That's the accusation, almost on a daily basis. Can you defend that?
Yeah, I could deny it.
Will you allow more independent reporters to go into Gaza and see it for themselves?
We asked the decorated veteran television interviewer Kerry O'Brien for his view.
Sharry Markson might as well have simply handed Benjamin Netanyahu a microphone and said, "Let me know when you're finished."
O'Brien and his peers shared with us some of the questions they would have asked the Israeli PM. They're on our website, and I'd encourage you to read them. This morning, Sharry Markson told us it was important that her viewers hear Netanyahu explain Israel's efforts to avoid civilian casualties and deliver aid, and that,
unlike the left-leaning figures Media Watch spoke to, who no longer work in mainstream media, I've been inundated with high praise from leading editors and journalists describing the interview as outstanding, first-class and agenda-setting.
a spokesperson for Sky News told us that if the ABC believes it could have done a better job, it should secure its own interview with Netanyahu, and
the ABC has spent a decade trying to discredit Sharry Markson's reporting, including falsely dismissing her accurate investigation into COVID-19's origins as a conspiracy. The ABC has a long history of anti-Israel bias and is in no position to lecture others on objectivity in journalism.
With a track record of breaking news and a Rolodex of politicians willing to take her call, few could really argue Sharry Markson is an unserious journalist. But for me, this interview crossed the line into open advocacy for the Netanyahu government. Landing the Israeli PM was clearly a serious get, but what Sky News delivered was also a dud, which denied audiences their only chance to see Netanyahu tested from an Australian point of view and to think more deeply, not just about Anthony Albanese's divisive diplomatic decision, but also about one of the most awful conflagrations in the history of the Middle East. And now to the world's premier technology magazine, which a few months ago reported a startling and bizarre twist to modern romance.
Welcome to the new frontier of love, the hyper-niche internet wedding. More couples are choosing to host their ceremonies in the very digital spaces where they first met, bonded, and built their lives.
The author, a rather elegant Margot Blanchard, managed to land an interview with a digital celebrant who, between putting virtual rings on virtual fingers, gave readers a glimpse into her busy schedule.
I've had couples exchange vows using emoji reactions. I've had Discord bots cue the processional music. I've seen Twitch chats cry in real time.
And while I assure you I do happen to know what she's talking about, it seems that since offering these telling remarks, Jennifer Hugh has vanished without trace. Also gone missing, the article itself.
Wired editorial leadership has determined this article does not meet our editorial standards.
And which of the magazine's standards are those? Oh, just that its articles about technology not be written by technology. Because, as you've already guessed, dear Margot is, in all likelihood, a robot. Though it must be said, a rather productive one. With a slew of bylines about Disneyland, mental health and censorship. The articles featuring people and places which unfortunately do not exist, as well as stirring first-person reportage like this in Business Insider.
My home had turned into a never-ending workplace. My son would pull at my sleeve while I was finishing a report, his little face hopeful.
What tosh? She can't have sleeves, she doesn't have arms. Which might be partly why Business Insider also scrubbed Margot's purpling prose from its website. The dirty laundry being nicely aired by, would you believe it, a flesh and bone reporter at Britain's Press Gazette. So, when it was first pitched up, why didn't a tech-savvy outfit like Wired check the article first? Answer, it did.
A Wired editor ran the story through 2 third-party AI detection tools, both of which said that the copy was likely to be human-generated.
Which will no doubt have news editors everywhere breaking into a cold sweat. Margot's true identity only laid bare by dint of actual research by actual humans. Difficult news too for our bean-counting masters. Turns out you can't sack us all, or at least not yet. And that's all from us tonight. Be sure to check us out on ABC iView, as well as YouTube, Facebook and X. You can find full statements on our website. And don't forget to send us your tips. I'll see you next week.